All right, so I think we're going to continue where we left off on Monday. I did get the GD extension working again finally, which is great, and got things back to like the app runs, it does OCR, it does all the OpenCV stuff before doing OCR. I'm having some quality issues, but I think that's just like a settings tweak that needs to be made, given the new code. And I think I know exactly what the settings change is, but before I do that change, so get GD extension to build import, that got done. Rewrite GD script implementation, that got done. Let us add an item here. Hold on, seems a little loud to me. Yeah, go a little softer. But yeah, the main thing I need to do now is save debug images again. So we lost that functionality. So I need that back. That way I can see, for every step in the debug, in like the process, like what does the image manipulation look like? And then from there I can then see where it's buggy. Because, yeah, the quality's bad right now, and I think I know exactly why, but I want to be able to visually see it, and then I can go fix it. And then one other thing is run test case images. So I lost that ability as well. And so that would mean then we don't need the VR headset, which means I can do development a lot faster instead of having to build the GD extension, so run scans to build the C++, then like reload Godot, then after reloading Godot, then like export it to the headset, then put the headset on, then open a book, and then wait for the thing to load. Like, instead of having to do all that, I'll be able to just run a single command from the command line, a command I already have, and then I would just need to like load those images, pass them down into the GD extension again, and then it'll, in this way, actually, I could run like 10 tests in the time it would take me to test one manually. So that'll be huge. And then erroring on bad OCR. Yeah, I think in theory, if I'm right about the bug that I'm seeing as to what's preventing quality, I should be at the point now where I can instrument, like take the text, measure how far apart the quality is on the text, and then pass or fail the test case based on where that percentage is. And I could set that as a line in the sand. I could say, hey, look, for now, just needs to be 60% close. And as long as it's 60% good, but then I'll fix a couple things. I'll get it from 60 to 80%. And then I can tweak that. I can then say, okay, now that's the new waterline. And then, yeah, dewarp, deskew. That might be part of getting that error rate down. And then, yes, can we please be done with C++? I'm going to say it's not going to happen today, but maybe this week it will. So let's do that. Python -m run. And that is our background process. Cool. Now, I started getting... Let's launch VS Code from here. It's just easier for me to see the C++ there. I prefer Vim still, but I don't know. One of these days I'll get my Vim set up on Windows properly. I just haven't had the patience or time to do it. Alright, so everything's great. The issue I'm running into is... And it's not complaining right now. Why is it not complaining? Maybe I need to wake it up. Alright, so I'll just build, and I should get an error. Could have sworn this was causing a problem. Watch, now it's just going to work, even though I thought I was having a... Sometimes VS Code will complain about things. It'll say that there's a bug in the code, and then you build it. Oh, now, there we go. Yeah, see, it's complaining here. But it'll build fine, maybe, and it'll run fine. So, actually, you know what? Might as well... Yeah, okay. It didn't like it. Thought so. So, let me ask an AI. Let me ask a friend. Found a friend on this one. So I have a GD extension for Godot 4.5. I created a utility class to hold utility functions, whatever. Most of my calls to that class work, but one of them isn't working. Can you help? Okay, so I'll just say I created another class to hold some functions. Most of my calls to that class work. Here is the method with the error. The error is, quote, for context, here is that method from the other class. Okay, so what does a init debug session do? All right, I think it's going to tell me it needs to be static, but if I know that if I do that, if I make it static, that causes its own problem. And I'll just have the AI go down this rabbit hole for me. Hold on a second. There we go. The error occurs because you're trying to call as if it's a static method, but it's actually an instance method that requires an object to be called on. Option 1, make the method static. If it doesn't need instance data, it does. Oh, right. Option 2, call it on the enhancer. Oh, duh. Okay. Right. But the enhancer doesn't exist yet. That's fine. Here, I'll just do it there. Has no member init debug session. Does it not? Yeah, okay. So option 3, make it a standalone function. Yeah, but it needs its own thing. Option 2 is what I believe I need. I have to move the call to refactor for that. Oh. Can we do that with... okay. That makes sense. Okay, so maybe this is all I needed. Okay, now it's happy. and we build. Okay, right, because it's a unique pointer to a unique instance pointer class type thing. All right, and then what should happen now? So we should reset the so we'll create the debug session immediately. Where is that? Right, so we're going to initialize it. Right now I have this inside camera enhancer. I want it inside utility, but I can't be bothered to do that refactor as being annoying. The build succeeded, by the way. So, okay, so initializing it. Is debug files enabled? And then we're going to return. But we get the platform path, which on Windows would be the tester. By the way, if I bring that up, let me see this here. I think we're actually like gonna make big progress today. I want to believe. Where am I? Okay. Testing. Right, and then test results. Okay. It did do something on June 30th, right? I wonder if that was Monday. I did accidentally run this, I guess. And it just, okay, so it created the folders, but it didn't do anything. All right, so this is the folder where it should go to when I run tests anyway. And then on Android, it's going to write it to here, which is fine because then I'm going to have that command to pull it off of the hardware. Okay, so that's get platform, make sure the folder exists, and then we log something just so we know what's happening. All right, but that's only going to be true if is debug, which is set in the header. Hold on. Right. It's just going to be so that defaults to false. There's my debug file things. This is wrong. It should be using the function. I don't know if it really matters. But I might as well be consistent if I'm going to do it that way. I think a lot of this was some boilerplate AI code that I don't know if I necessarily agree with. I might want to gut it later. Okay, so that's init debug, reset debug. Okay, so this is where gotcha. So the setter is just all defined in the header. So that way this doesn't need to exist outside of the header. So I should be able to just call it to be true. So that would be camera enhancer. And I guess we have to do the pointer thing again. And actually, it would just be debug here. Debug mode. Yeah, see, I'm passing around all this debug settings stuff. Like, why? if debug mode.load. Fine, I'll just go with debug for the moment. I have to understand some of this kind of threaded stuff. But that should be setting it to, okay, so that's going to set it to true, I think by default. Like start scanning. What am I doing in Godot? What are we doing there? So most of my GD script code is going to get gutted and removed. Mostly everything's just going to be now main.gd and OCR manager. We'll still have the debug HUD. I guess really it's just this camera enhancer is going to get nuked because that doesn't need to exist at all. And there's some things in main that I'll be able to get rid of as well. So where are we doing this? Or did I have it here? No, I'm actually specifically looking for start scanning. That's what's going to determine debug mode. And that's done on main. Is debug. Which is it's gonna be true. I think it's like pretty much hard-coded for true anytime I run locally. Just because every local run is a debug run by default. Right, so then the other bit being is debug logging, right? And that's not used anywhere. Right, because I had moved all, again, this is things I gotta gut, right? So I had moved all logging to utils. So when I call log, it's actually calling utils log. It's calling this log, which is gonna call utils log, and utils log is debug enabled. And that, again, this does this a different way. And I hard-coded it to true for now. Yeah, okay. I'm fine with just hard-coding these things. Later I'll figure out how to properly... Again, I've got like, this is happening in 3 different places. Utility has a different one than Camera Enhancer has a different one from Book Text Scanner. So I'll have to gut a lot of code and refactor it, but... I really just don't want to worry about that right now. I really just want this to work. Okay, so all logging's going to work just fine. Long term, I would be right here, probably setting this up here, doing something to set up see, this is static. That probably doesn't work. This can't be static, I think, is the issue. Like, it has to be part of the class, which means you have to create an instance of utility and then call set on it and then read it later. All these being static doesn't really make sense. Okay. Again, I said I wasn't going to work on that right now, so let's not do that. But eventually, yeah, eventually this won't be an enhancer. This would all be... I could rip out a lot of the code from this file, because this file is huge, right? Yeah, we're talking 1,000 lines. Yeah. Half of that, I think, is probably like utility debug functionality that doesn't need to exist all the time. All right, anyway, so we set debug true. We initialize our debug session. Great. And then we set our affinity. That's only for Android. And then we come into here. We start our main loop, which is a while loop forever. And then basically, when I come in here, what are we doing? Right, well, if we've decided to come in here, so that means, like, you know, in this case, debug mode true. Debug mode.load. I don't love that being the syntax for, like, reading this variable, but I get it. So if we're in debug mode, we do some things. Process request. Oh yeah, we wait for a trigger, and then yeah, that's fine. And then we call process, and then this is going to reset debug session. So that, what does that do? So, assuming we're enabled files, which we would have at this point, we generate a timestamp for the current folder. And then we set our image count to 0. Right. But we're not going to, are we? Yeah, actually this is probably fine. Yeah, because when we save a debug image, we up our image count. Cool. And then, yeah, that's only used in that one place where we save an image. Cool. So then, we then do our processes, and we call image enhancer, and we do all of our steps. So, for instance, this shouldn't matter, but this one. So detect target text bounding box. We should do all that. And then we call save debug image, right? So, okay, so this should work. We should be good to go. Let me run all that. And let's run it once on the headset and make sure we get. Ideally, we would see a folder pop up here. And then I can get the test version, and then I can move on to the test version. I'm feeling pretty confident this will either work right out the box, or if there is a bug, it's a small bug. I want to believe that I'm going to start moving faster now. New drivers are required from, fine, whatever. Let's do that. Yeah, whatever. And build succeeded just fine. You can't find the headset because you shut your app down. So they just killed the app, and now I just got to restart it. No, thank you. Not looking to restart my computer right now. All right, let's cast. There we are. Okay, let's do that. Let's build and launch. And where is, here we go. Let's put this up here. That doesn't need to take up a lot of space, right? Queue up the permissions. think for whatever reason with this new refactor of code, now that I pushed everything down to the GD extension, things behave a little oddly when I launch the headset. I don't know why. Let's see if that's still true today. And then I've been having this issue where it's not connecting the debug session and I'm not getting the logs inside Godot. And I don't know why that is. I was wondering why my headphones checked out on me. What happened to my stuff? Oh, here we go. What? I'm confused. Hold on. Weird. Yeah, there we go. Okay, that should have... No, it's still going. What is it taking its sweet time for? And YouTube's complaining that it's not getting enough video. Maybe I was hitting like a resource limit or something when doing the building. There we go. And because I can't trust it to get the logs, let me start that, and then just because I want to, let's just do our tail. Okay. And let's see if we get all the images we're looking for. So if I hold that pretty close and steady, I no longer get that freezing, which is part of the reason why I did that refactor. And I should be able to take the headset off immediately. All right, it's running, we get the logs. And again, it did some OCR. We got some text, but the text we got was very minimal and meh. That's because something's going on. So let's go find out what that is. I should be able to... let me go back over here. Don't have the files yet, and the reason I won't have them is I need to copy them off. No such files. There we go. So this is wrong. Let's change that. I thought I ran into that issue before. Did we get files? No? Or did it put them here? July 2nd. Oh yeah, this. Okay, so it did it. Hold on, let's change our view. Okay. These are from older, but this came from just now. Anything is left the selling promise on... Yeah. This is exactly that text. So these two files are from literally right now. And then, nice. Okay, so I'm copying and pasting from the wrong place. Yeah, how can I'll mess with that soon. I'll figure out the cleaner way to do it. But here we go. Extra large icons. So come on. Step 1, looking good. That looks pretty solid. Then we do a filter down. And then we do our bounding box. How does this bounding box look? I think that actually looks really solid, actually. Yeah, we'll even get like the header up here because that connection was small enough, and then some of the header here. Those are the two distinct pages it detected with all the regions for the two. Those are our bounding boxes. What happens when we square them up? So we didn't get quite the page number, which is a little disappointing. But that is the page. That's our template for alignment. That's good alignment, good alignment. So we just have the ones through good alignment. Are we missing files? We are missing files. Okay. Let's do this. Let me nuke these. I think that just confirmed visually what my complaint was. I think I do know exactly what the issue is. But let's dive back into the code. And so when we did the book scanner, so it's our main process loop, process available images, collect from batch. So here's our collect from batch. I should write these out here. So what did I used to call it? Just so I know. Yeah, so I'll just pull that over so I have it. So I should be able to do... Yeah, if it's valid and not empty, push it back. And we'll do our save debug image, which it doesn't know what that is, so we should just need OCR processor at this point. Well, yeah, OCR processor should be started. And we should be able to just do image. Oh no, that's not an OCR processor. What am I thinking? Camera enhancer. It's not going to have that class. Wrong one. Not suitable. So we're grabbing our raw images here. Let me see here. So we get them. They are Godot images, which is not what we want to write out. But that's our batch. We then reset the debug session. Convert Godot images to CV mat for processing. Okay, you know what? Let's do that. Let's come down here. So we're looping over them anyway. We might as well just do it here. But we don't have the number. Fine. Where's our account? Didn't we have Well, actually, you know what? It's fine. We're gonna get the count. Because when we write the file, yeah, we give it the current folder number underscore name. Right, so I don't have to give it the count. That was the whole point of this. So instead, I can just do CV frame. And I can call it raw camera frame. That's what I wanted. Cool, so I got all those there. And then template frame. So now I can do this here. And we can say, here's our template frame. So that's important. I deleted it so I can't see what we saw. So I think it did all those things, and then I think we're missing some, right? So let's detect text bounding box. So we do save here. See, we're always checking, is debug files enabled? No, actually we shouldn't have to be, because yeah, we were already doing that. The only reason why there's an extra check here is because why bother doing all this before the save? All right, so that's detecting bounding box. We get the number of regions. Then we do the debug draw, filter regions, cluster regions. Cool. Bounding boxes. Let's check this one. Then we got their debug name, save debug image with debug name. I don't know why we would need that. I think we could just hard code it here. But I'm not refactoring right now. So that's fine. All right, so far so great. All right, that's going over here. Okay, so we generate a bunch of images that way for the bounding boxes. And then we're just grabbing the first one for now, page 1. We don't care about page 2. Let's not worry about it. And then crop images from bbox. We're going to do that for each of them. And we don't save this off. And I think that's probably fine. Because we already have the images, we're just going to crop them based on that same bbox. I mean, we could always add it here if we need to. All right, this, though, we do care about. And this is one we are definitely missing. This is the one that's going to be the smoking gun that tells me what's wrong. Enhance text from frames. So we have our template frames. And then we align it and we push it back. And then we average it. Ah, okay. I'm only saving debug images here if they're bad. I think. No. I always save it with good alignment. Okay, that's fine. What we are missing, though, is... we can put this here. And actually, why not write 2? You can do averaged and enhanced. You can do enhanced, averaged. So that's all the enhancing. That's the step that's failing, I think. Because after that, I don't know why it would be empty. That wouldn't make sense. CV mat to Godot. So we get our Godot image, and then we send it over to the OCR. And that's the whole game. So now if I run this, we'll actually see what the issue is. And I'm gonna call my shot. So the issue is going to be, the fix is going to be, I think all the way at the top here, or maybe it's in the .h. Here we go. The capture interval is at 60 milliseconds. And I suspect that that is too close together, and that we are getting frames that are too similar. And because they're too similar, we aren't getting enough difference in our data. So if I like drag that out, nope, that's not going to tell me anything. Not very readable, but we got logs, right? So let's take a look at the logs. Fast alignment, fast alignment, fast alignment. That should not be. It shouldn't be that simple. I mean, ideally what we would see is the 2 middle frames, since like the middle frame is our template frame, so we should see frame 1 and frame 3 maybe have fast alignment, but then the 2 frames that are a little further out, the 0th and the 4th, those ones, like, they should be a little, you know, would expect to see a little more effort needed to align them. So I suspect that's not happening, and then because they're fast aligning, they may even be the exact, actually, correlation is 99.5. I wonder then if that means that like literally the images are identical, or like they're maybe a frame off. And that could be, hold on, let me block somebody. Cool. That could be, you know, in the old version, 60 milliseconds was good. But in this new version, maybe it runs even faster. And so I actually need a bigger gap, more than 60 milliseconds. I might need like 100 milliseconds. All right, but that's all fine. Let's run that. Might as well uninstall. do the permissions. I'll skip the tailing for now. I mean, I'll still capture the logs because I'm still having issues with... Maybe, again, it's not happening today so far, but not getting the logs in Godot, which is annoying. Once I get this working, I'll push the code up, and then I'll get the next piece set in play. I mean, even if I can't fix the issue, at least let me identify the issue and see it visually, and then I can work on a fix. Okay. Take our moment to load. Okay. And there's our logs, fast alignment all around, sure. And we're saving images. So, well, hey, it did it a lot better that time. I mean, we got a lot more text. Oh, it's running twice? No, thank you. I didn't want you to do that. I guess I accidentally triggered it. Okay, that's actually annoying if it's going to do that. So I need to, was it ADB ls storage? Let's go look here. Right, and we don't have the folder to pass. Like, it's gonna write these files, but it doesn't know what folder to put them in. So what if I do I put the slash there. Oh, and I did the remove. Darn it. I shouldn't have done the remove. Because then I can't experiment. Yeah, it's still... that's annoying. So it's going to be the first one I care about. Here we are. So there's our raw frames. And honestly, let's just visually see how different they are. They're probably not different at all. Yeah, they all seem identical. Still looking good. There's our bounding boxes. Pretty good. Yeah, they're all good alignment. Hold on, so this is... So again, we should see, like, there's good alignment. What can I see on this one? I guess those W's are a little bit iffy. This word whole here is a little fuzzy. The period at the end of product. And then the averaged versions. Okay, I think it did improve things a bit, and that's probably why we saw better results. And then here is the... No, you know what? That looks right. That looks good. Resources doesn't look the best. Where is... Yeah, resource there. Let's go back a couple. Well, there's our template. Yeah, resource. That word resource is struggling. And if I go ahead a couple, still kind of struggling. But if we go ahead to the enhanced, yeah, it's still troublesome, but it's a lot better. Like, that looks pretty good, actually. I think the biggest issue is warp and skew, right? I think if I fix warp and skew, yeah. I mean, again, if we compare our template frame, well, that's our template frame. Template for alignment. Yeah, if we compare this one to this one. Here, let's do side by side. And let's just go look at the... Let's go look from the top. $285. Yeah, you can see like the C is a little fuzzy, but here it's quite crisp. The R still has problems with its tails. Chasm. To put it simply, the it looks a little better. Base versus base. This base is much clearer, more distinct. Okay. But it works. It isn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. I think I will still do a tweak. Are you doing text recognition or something like that? Yes. So text recognition in VR headset. So Quest 3, Passthrough camera API. And so basically building a VR app where you can open a physical book in front of you and it'll match the soundscape and the ambiance of the environment to the content of what you're reading. So if the story gets a little tense, the music's going to get a little tense. If if you're in the forest and there's a little bird tweet in the background, you'll hear a little bit of that diegetic sound while you're reading. And if the app is doing its job well, you kind of forget it's there and you just get lost in your story without the distractions of the outside world. And so I'm basically at the point where I've got the full OpenCV OCR data pipeline working. There's some tweaks I need to make to it, and there's like one or two other little features I want to implement, but otherwise, like, it's just about where I want it to be, I think, quality-wise. And now moving on to more of the world environment. You can see I've got like a sky and background ground here, but I think it's just about ready for like filling out the environment, and then probably spending more time than I'm willing to admit to myself, getting like the digital book, the digital clone of the physical book that's going to be in your hands in the experience. Because again, you're just going to be holding a real book in the real world, but there'll be a digital version of that. What's it called? What's the term for that? Digital twin. Yeah, so like the digital twin of the book. Making sure the font there is very good and crisp and readable and feels right. That the book aligns with your hands. So there's a lot of little tiny things like that need to be done. But the core experience is going to be mostly, in the end, I think it's going to be largely audio. Because if you're reading a book, it's going to be mostly background audio that's really going to sell the experience. So yeah, that's what I'm building. Average Godot enjoyer. Nice to meet you. Okay, so yeah, so let me tweak this. Let me set this to, I think before I had it at like 100 milliseconds. I'll keep the code comment the way it was. That way I don't forget what it used to be. But I think I'm going to move on from this for the moment. And then, because that should fix it. Now, I do think I have dewarp and deskew, right? I thought I had, or maybe that was one of my old... No, or maybe it was the... I've had to back up some things and do some ugly things. I'm ready to delete all these extra folders and files though, because I finally got things to where I needed them to be. Dewarp. No, I never actually implemented dewarping, deskewing. Okay. So that would be the next step in the pipeline. Would be. Where's our steps? Here we go. So we do our enhancing. And this is where we would do dewarp and deskew. Try implementing those, because I think, yeah, that might be the last linchpin in getting the quality where we need it to be. And then go, you know, convert the file format, and send it off to OCR. Where is my... wrong path. All right, let me edit my steps here. All right, saving debug images again works. Oh yeah, before I go down that path, let me get the test cases running again, because then I wouldn't need the VR headset. So for that to work, I need a way of passing them in. So basically that means... Here, let me shut this down for now. I don't need the VR headset for the moment. So what did I have here? In my debug HUD, I had it set up for command line running, where we could run test cases and then kill the app when we're running in debug mode. Basically, if we're not running an XR, do this. I do want to change this to be like a flag that I can pass. I'm sure Godot has it for the command line arguments. So run test cases loads the files from the folder, well, from the test cases folder, and then we'll write to the output. So all this works. All this was already there. We create the folder, and then here was the call down. So what I probably need to do then is so that's load debug images. The images is an array. Right. So let's do okay, yeah. Let's just work it out slowly. So var images is an array of type image. And we're going to do this. Cool. So that's our images. And then I should be able to do what was it? Game state dot scanner service dot dot something. So how could we do this? We have our main process loop, which starts, well, here. When we initialize things, instantiate things, we do start scanning, where we pass a debug mode. And that's debug for testing. But that sets a bunch of things, and it like clears out the queue of raw images, which yeah, I'm curious if this would be running or not. Yeah, this is capture and... Oh, right. There's a process step. Yeah, this process function. So, in theory, that... Well... Like, I could do... Well, but I still need to... I still want to pass them in some way. I mean, actually, it wouldn't be bad. What's the developer user experience? So it wouldn't be bad to, instead of doing load debug images, if I just did all this in C++. But it's test cases, and it doesn't really matter. I just need a function where I can call this on some images. The problem, I guess the problem is this process call. I think right now is going to get called every single time. Yeah, so this is going to like, will capture and store an image every like, that's kind of a big deal. Now what happens though? I guess it transmits signals, which I do want to happen. So there is value in this process always running. So maybe I do want to not touch this. I also, for testing scenarios, like I want to replicate production as closely as possible. So as much as I'd want to short circuit things, maybe it's good that this runs. Capture enabled won't be true until start scanning is called. Okay. And if the camera texture is valid, which I think it would be, always. I can't see where it wouldn't be. So I guess worst case means like when I'm running the automated tests, this raw image queue is just going to be filled with nonsense. It'll be filled with like empty images since we can't capture camera images. I don't love that. All right, let me assume that that's okay for the moment. So we start scanning. I don't necessarily want to... Well, maybe I should call this, right? Because this is... I do need to call start scanning. Ooh, that means I could skip capture enabled. And I could initialize the raw image queue with the images coming in. And then everything else behaves as normal. We would have... We'd initialize Tesseract. we'd initialize our camera enhancer. And then we do our main thread. Although the issue now I'm realizing is when I'm doing this test, I'm doing a while loop here and I'm calling this over and over again. So I might want to call this like this might get called anyway on, well, in theory I'll refactor this later so that the main scene never gets loaded and that just the debug HUD gets loaded as its own scene. In which case then I would probably do something like, so basically it would be only load this scene for running tests. Then this needs to be called extra flag to disable image recording. So that's what I would do. Like if we were just calling the debug scene, I mean this debug HUD is attached to its own scene. So load that scene and just run that scene by itself. In which case, if I was doing that, then this would need to get called. And again, if we're doing that, especially if I'm able to call a specific function in this script, then I wouldn't do this on ready. I would run test cases like on their own by themselves. I wouldn't need this block here. The debug HUD would still be for when I'm testing with the headset on. Okay, so then, oops, what happened? That was cool. I hit a keyboard command and it shot this over to my second monitor. So that means then start scanning is its own process that's already running. So what about the main process loop? I mean, we wouldn't want that loop running either. I guess if it kicks off on its own, it would pause. So we could trigger it. And if it's debugged, wait for manual trigger. And then we would call process. And when we call process, then we would reset the debug session. And we would collect the frames. So, and then this is, it waits for the queue to have a size to it. And then it runs it. Okay, so maybe that's good. I like this. Now I'm thinking, it's just going to be this. That's all it's going to be. So we would just do trigger scan. And we initialize this with create folder. That's the folder name. Right, and if we're not in, right, so then this is really our scenario here. We have our images, so I would do something like GameState.scanner dot, I don't know, let's just call it manually set images. And so this would just manually set our images, trigger a scan, which is going to go do whatever I need it to do. Because we're in debug mode already, like it'll do all the appropriate things. It'll save off images, it'll score things, it'll produce a score report, which I haven't done yet, but that's fine, like test results. Nice. Okay, so if we manually set images, then that means start scanning here. So this needs to accept a new argument. Is that true? No, it doesn't. Is debug. Don't I already have a check for if we're on Android or Windows? I wonder. Can I do that? Not a pound and if? Yeah. Is that appropriate to do? I don't know. That means we've disabled capturing. Which means process will just do signals and it won't do anything else. It's literally the only thing. Gotcha. So right here is where I'd want to do it. And we would just do void used for running tests locally, not used in production or when testing on headset. Okay. And then how do I call it? So do I have a Godot image thing here? This is private, right? Yeah, that's a private. Collect from batch. Right, so it's just doing that whole thing. That's fine. By the way, I do need this though. That is what I need. So it's going to be images. And this is going to be public. It's got to be public. So put that there. Okay, that's happy. Now, what does process do? Something up here is not happy. No, that's just deletion. Okay, so process. Where is process? I can kind of just emulate what I did there. Here's process. So literally all it's doing is, so this is a public method, and all it does is call down to this method. Last capture time. I wonder if this should actually be... Ooh, this could be part of the reason why I'm getting issues with that 60 milliseconds versus 100 milliseconds. Because this is going to get set to now. And now is right now. Now is not then. Then is... Now is then. And then is now. Spoilers for a movie coming up. For anybody who hasn't seen Spaceballs. Yeah, so this is going to be here, and then who knows how long this takes. I mean, I guess this is pretty fast, but it basically means that the last capture time is going to be a few milliseconds earlier. So then the last image, so capture and queue image, like however long this operation takes. I mean, I could record it. I could do my log and see how long, but if this takes 50 milliseconds, then that means this value here is a whole, like, 50 milliseconds sooner. Which is fine, I guess, unless there's some weird delay here. Okay, so this is on the main thread. Right, so then we do a lock. Okay, so it's good that I'm doing this right here. So basically I have my images. And then let's just copy it down. And we'll get rid of image. Error manually setting images. I don't think I need this. Let's just remove it for now. Let's get rid of the if check. I don't need all this extra validation. It's just running tests locally. Nothing crazy here. Shift tab. Okay, so we've got our lock. And then our for loop. Limit our size, we don't need to do that. It does the lock, but it doesn't release the lock? That's interesting. Where else are we using? So it just does the lock. I guess, does that mean... Maybe that's why this is in a bracket here. So that the lock is only for this period of time. I'll have to go read up again on how locks work. But we're just doing that here too. We're just doing the lock, call the thing, and then be done with it. So I guess it's safe. Alright, I'll trust it. Yeah, I mean, this is just doing a lock and then calling the store value. Locks and things and threads and all that stuff in C++ always scares the heck out of me. Just because I never feel like I know it as much as I probably should. Okay, well, here we are then. Let's do our for loop. Yeah, I should be able to do this. Now, this isn't going to work because the image is not of the right type. And raw image queue is... No, actually, they are raw. They're Godot images. No, okay, so good. Then that's it. I'm done. That should work. Alright, well, there's only one way to find out. Let's run a test, shall we? So, where's my... Where are you? Here we go. Alright, let me just do a build just to do it. Build both. And then I'll run an automated test. And see what it does. And here I'll back out a directory. So I should get a folder here as opposed to this files folder, which is super annoying that it does that, but I don't know, I guess that makes it easier to know that like all this came off of the headset versus this that came off of running tests locally. Anyway, I should be able to just do .test.sh. And I didn't tell it to skip building, so it's going to build Windows again, which is annoying. But I can skip that in the future. And did it succeed? Let's see here. So... set up debug panel, set up enhancer, created folder, and then created the folder aligned frames. Why did it create that folder? I mean, it's kind of working. Okay, that's fine. Invalid call. Non-existent function. Really? What do you mean that's not a... It's public. Manually set images. Which takes a vector of... Well, is it a vector of images or... What's the current code? Remind me again. So the current code would be... Where's our public? It's a typed Godot array. That might need to be it. Okay, and then maybe that's what it wants. Let me check again. Yeah, so it was just a typed array of image. Let's go to its definition. Here we go. I had it as a const. That probably makes sense. And then yeah. Why is it incompatible? Where's our public? There's our public. Oh, yeah, well. That would obviously be the case. So and none was found, right. Okay, so what did I do here? Just because I'm being lazy and I don't want to remember how to figure it out on my own. So we had our Godot frames. Yeah, do I need to copy them or something? I may need to do that. Okay, now it's happy for the moment. Let me just run a build again. And then now if I run test, I'll do the skip this time. Yeah, because one, it'll only build Windows. I don't need, that's the other benefit, is I don't need to build Android if I'm running these tests. And I should be able to do -S. And you can see how fast that is to test the scenario. Which now, if I mean, I said 10 times faster, it might even be like 50 times faster. Okay, we only wrote a couple images. Still, manually non-existent function. How are you a non-existent function? Manually set images. You literally exist in public. Let me reload the project. Stop and reload. Yeah, it might have been in the, might have already had things locked up. What's going on? What up? DJ Maroda Ray. How you doing? Building a GD extension in Godot that does OCR on text coming in from the MetaQuest 3 VR headset. That's what I'm working on. So Meta opened up that API a few months ago, and so I'm building an app that will let you take a physical book off a bookshelf, open it in front of you, and match the soundscape and the environment to the content of the book you're reading. Let me save this. Let me just close Godot. And then, whoa, why did that shrink itself? I don't know why I did that. Okay. I'll just put that over there. Let me not skip building. Let me just run it again with the build. And I can zoom in a little bit. So build Windows. Did it like it now? No, it still didn't like it. Why? Why? Interesting. In any case, it initialized test data. File system failed. Used Godot fallback. File system error. Debug session started. Images will be saved to nowhere. So it failed to... So that's the reason why I probably didn't get any real images. Also, yeah, probably the reason why I got images here. I'll launch Godot again. So am I saving them off? Is that what I'm doing? So I'm loading debug images. On debug save image. I don't want to do that. Yeah, and then I'm giving it a number and everything. I don't need to do that right now. I can always turn that back on later if I need to. Okay, but what's the deal here? So see, it's saying that that's not a method. Manually set images is not a thing. Even if I if I reload the project, I mean, so it built. It's just not picking up my new method for some reason. Also, why is it not yelling about this right now? Menu's not a thing. So interesting. So void, is the naming right? Am I just being paranoid? No. I think I'm okay. Manually set images, which is literally right there. Void book text scanner. How? maybe I need to do this. I don't think I need to, but let's be crazy. It's still not going to like it, right? Weird. Let's phone a friend. I have a GD extension in Godot 4.5. Everything works fine. I recently added a new function. See below. Added it to the public portion of .h. When I run my Godot test suite, it can't seem to find the method. I get this error. New method for context. What is my error I'm getting? The issue is that you've added a C++ method but haven't exposed it to Godot's binding system. Oh, yes. Okay. That makes sense. Okay. That is like the most useful thing about AI, is just like the obvious stuff that you're just kind of blind to. It's clear. And now it'll run. But we probably still won't get images on the file system. So I gotta go figure out what the reason is for that. Which should work, I would think. Because it was working for the headset, so why wouldn't it work now? Oh, probably just because headset, it knows where to write it for Android, but for local Windows development, maybe it just doesn't know where to write them. Okay, here we go. Godot is starting in normal mode because it's not XR available. Ah, creating folder. Well, no, yeah, so it does create the folder. All right, what do we get? Went fishing. So, folder 5036. Yep. Ooh, two test scenarios. So I have two test scenarios. Empty and empty. Okay. Trigger scan only works in debug mode. Huh? Trigger scan only works in debug mode. Trigger scan. We're not in debug mode. And we didn't Set debug mode? Start scanning. Got initialized wrong? We should see the log statement here. Where is it? Now start scanning. Wait a minute. Oh, did it not get initialized? I mean, we got a constructor. Oh, huh. Okay, so maybe I already have it. Maybe. Oh, that's actually pretty nice. Actually, what am I doing here? Vim test.sh. How do I call this? I call it headless. So I'm calling Godot and I'm just passing headless flag. That's all I'm doing. Shouldn't that have... We should see starting scanner. We got the constructor. That's expected. Starting scanner. Gotcha. So this happened after this setup. Okay. And I'm not going to go down the rabbit hole of just trying to call the one class because I tried that already and I know you can do it. I didn't want to go down that rabbit hole. So basically we're calling this gets called too early is the issue. So run test cases. So the debug HUD. Oh, right. Right. All right, well, I should be able to do this. I don't need those anymore. So now we'll start the scanner first, and then we'll set up the debug panel. And then we'll request permissions. Can I do... Can I do clear? Is clear allowed? I don't know if I always want to clear every time they run this, but... Okay, that did work. And then what happens if I turn quiet back on, I wonder? I mean, I have quiet on scans, so... Alright, what was our complaint? We said... It does feel so nice to finally get back to everything working the way it was working like a week ago, only now everything's running in C++, so it's a lot faster, and you know, I could finally, I don't know, get things to where they need to be. Right. Property not found, hand tracking. That's fine, all that's expected. I wonder if I can suppress some of those things. All right, starting scanner. Yep. So we initialize all this. That's all good. Why did that's... I mean, this is working, right? Like, it's doing the thing. So, where are we? Here we go. Control insert. Cool. So, that's feeling great. We're just not saving any images. And where are we? We are in this file, probably. There we are. Ensure debug folder exists. What path was it using? Here, let me spread this out a bit more. So init debug, and then we get our current debug folder. Debug session started. Images will be saved to. Where? Where will images be saved to? Nowhere. Where they save to? Nowhere. Kind of important. Current debug folder. That makes sense. That seems weird. I guess. No, something seems wrong here because this is totally working. On Android. This works on Android. So what am I missing here? Yeah, test results. Root debug folder. Init debug session. Where are you called? We call you once on start scanner. And that's it. So this seems wrong. I think that was wrong. Hopefully I didn't break this for the VR headset now. And then when we do reset, then we're saying, hey, we get the root. We probably need to, what does this do again? Does this create the directory? Create directories. Right. So we probably need that. Yeah. And these folders are empty, right? Cool. No, actually I do need to do a build, so I won't do a skip. Yeah, and then of course running this locally on the gaming machine where I have a GPU, the tests run a lot faster. So all the OCR, all the OpenCV logic, all that runs much quicker. And I could probably even parallelize it at some point. Like right now it's running these, hey, it succeeded at saving them. Right now it's running all these tests sequentially, but I only have 2 tests, and you can see it takes, a few seconds to run. If eventually I get to the place where I've got like 20 tests, 30 tests that I want to run, I could probably even run them in parallel. And basically have like 4 CPUs or four cores. Actually, how many CPU cores do I even have? In any case, either way, I could parallelize it, right? At least 2, right? So then I would have cut the time in half for running these tests. But also these tests can run in the background, so what do I care? And then I could also have this run as a GitHub action. So then I could push code to GitHub and have these tests run that way. So instead of manually running test.sh on my local, I could just make my code change, commit it, push it, and then go back to coding. And then 5 minutes later, go check on the test results to see if things are still going the way they're supposed to. I can't really trust this here because, well, no, I mean, this is fine. The alignment's fine. I guess the issue is those images. It's like 5. What I'm doing is I have our test cases. So these are the 2 test cases. And I've got these like, well, drag it over instead of expanding it even further. I've got 5 input images, and these are the images we're merging. And so how far apart were these taken? There's configuration for that in the code, but obviously for the test case, that's never going to be under test. Like, that won't be tested here. And I don't think there's a way to do that. Not without getting a little crazy and doing something like recording a video and then passing the video feed into Godot, and then no, thank you. That's always the reality of automated testing, is you want it to be as close to production as possible, to be as realistic of a test as possible, so if there's any issues, you can be pretty confident in how things are going, but you'll never actually replicate production. There'll always be some things that are a little off. So those are the test cases. Here are the test results. Is this... What happened here? Saving images to... So it made this folder. Got you. So it made, this is the folder, this folder got made, and these folders are empty still. But then down in the C++ code, it created this folder, and it literally dumped everything in here. In fact, I think it replaced things. So, yeah, here's an example of what happens when it doesn't align things properly. And speaking of, I need to fix that alignment logic, I think there's a bug there. Okay, so how can I fix that? In the debug HUD, I have it creating the folders. I guess I could do something like... Manually set images. I may rename this method. But this would then be and then that's going to be the folder. I need to fix the mapping. So then we have the folder. And then where's our save images? Collect from batch. Where's that here? Save image. Yeah, save debug image. Current debug folder. Yeah. Okay. Reset debug session. So where are you set? You're setting the .h, aren't you? It's a standard string. What if we did? I hate this for now, but custom debug folder dot empty. If not empty. So we'll do you know what? Yeah, and then fine, that's fine. We'll do an else condition. Can you do plus equals? Plus equals? Is that a thing? Plus equals the custom. Are you happy with that? Incompatible, right. reset debug session is a public method. Where are you? Reset debug session. There, now you're happy. You need a semicolon. Hold on, let me take a hot second break. Okay, so that's all happy. And then that just means I need to pass in I'm being lazy, so makes perfect sense. I forgot to add the bind. Thanks. I will thank my AI in order to get better results out of it. In theory, I don't know. Unrelated question. How do I convert a Godot string to a standard string, right? Right, so there's a Godot string. Right. That's it. It's just to get data. Cool. All right, I'll leave that error there, and then start scanning, debug. What was it? It was manually set. All right, so we have our lock, and since we have our lock, we might as well do so current folder. We can then do store. Is that declared on the .h? Right. It says it's atomic. Don't we have like a whole pause thing? Hold on. All right, well, I can just kind of follow a little bit of the pattern. How's latest result used? Just for curiosity. So we're just setting it and getting it. Right, it doesn't have to be anything special. I could put this under result handling. So we could do standard string. And I'll use the same naming convention. Call it custom debug folder. And then that way, it should be as simple as just setting it. And actually, yeah, we can just do and why am I not getting an error? Because I didn't finish what I was doing. Where's manual? Here we are. Right. Oh, because I just declared it that way. Right. So now when we manually set it, we set our custom debug folder to the data coming in from Godot for that path. And then when we do the resetting, we pass that in, which picks it up, and as long if it's not empty, then we use it as our root. Well, on the end of a root. Our root is always has a slash at the end. All right, this should work. And this should be the last bit for this wave of effort. Feeling good. Feeling like now I'm definitely back to where, if this works, now I'm definitely back to where the things were last week. Looking right. It looks like it put things in the right places. Cool. So, did it work? Test results. Here's our new folder that should have just gotten created. 1219. Yep. There we are. And there we are. Empty? No. No. You're not empty. What? You cannot be empty. This is a background process. Ooh, okay. So, I'll bet you anything. Like, this loop happens so fast. Very fast. But wait. No, right, because we create the folders here. So it runs through this very quick. What needs to happen is trigger scan, and then to do wait for finish signal. Ooh, that's annoying. I might not fix this just yet. I might not care. Most of the time right now, I'm just running one test scenario at a time anyway. And so I only care about one test, which I was going to add some, hacky logic right here to just say, hey, only run a test if the test scenario is a certain name, Darn. Let me think about that for a second. Because when we finish, let me clap some of these things down so I can get readability. Text scanned, done. So I could get the signal, but then how would I continue? I'd have to know. I mean, while test case name main.dir.next. Okay, I could build a list and store that list and then just go get the next one on the list. All right. But do I care enough? I mean, I guess this would just be... I may implement this off camera. I'll just do this like this afternoon or something like that. But really, this would be set the signal in ready. Build and save the list of DIRs we found. That actually cleans things up a little bit, because right now this method's looking pretty ugly. If I just made this method, hey, look, like go through that directory, iterate over it, find every test case name, create its folder, and then store on a list. Actually, yeah, just store in the list. What is test case path? Tester. Yeah, probably just store on a list the test case name. And then I could set up my signal so it just goes and grabs, like pops off of that list, the latest one, like removes from the list. And we just slowly remove from the list until nothing's left, right? And then if nothing's left, then we call shutdown. And that would be how run test cases would work. It would run as like a signal loop where we just keep running the next one. Yeah. And then all we would store in the list is the test case name. That's the only thing we care about anyway. And for each element of the list, every time the signal gets triggered, we build current folder. Heck, why not? We'll create the folder in that moment. We don't need to do any of this. In fact, this probably shouldn't have been done. We probably shouldn't have done it. Like these two steps should be inside the if block. And then tester is hard coded. Test case name, again, that's the only thing we're storing on the list. It's what we pass in. We load the images using that. Current dir is still just... Yeah, I mean, we can generate this... Yeah, actually, no, that would be generated at the onset of things as well, so that's set in stone. So folder name and tester are both set in stone. Yeah, easy. Okay, so I need to do that. I need to go implement that. I don't care about that at the moment. What I do care about, though, is... Yeah, that all this ran. See, there's a lot of movement. See, that's the averaging did bad. It was supposed to fix the alignment. See, it said this had good alignment, this had good alignment. See, it said they all had good alignment. And then it did bad. Now, I have a fix for this. I know where the code is. I stashed it somewhere. And so now I can bring in that code, rerun this test, compare this result to the new result, and confirm that the new version of alignment fixes this issue, which is why this test is called align frames, because that's the issue with this test. Now, in this case, I think what I actually want to have happen is I want it to throw out some of these. Because here it's saying that's the template. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah. It had 4 images that it said aligned well with the template. It's not supposed to be good alignment. At least one of them should be... It had to do something extraordinary to fix it. So something got lost there. Anyway, I'll fix that. But now we're back to having test results, which is nice. Cool. What is my tasks now? I'm feeling super motivated. I could totally keep going. Run test case images. That, you know, that works. I got some bugs, but that's okay. The next thing would be, yeah, I mean, we can run OCR, so I want to run OCR and report back on the issues. And then implement dewarp deskew. I do need to, let me do this. Fix alignment. We'll call that regression, because that was working well. Basically, I tried optimizing the code for speed, and yeah, it still has alignment code, it still does alignment, and it's faster, but I think the quality dropped quite a bit, and I'd rather not worry about speed for the moment. Error on bad OCR. That's fun. To do that, are we doing OCR? Yeah, so we're done getting Haka results. Text extracted. It's funny, this is going to result in me implementing the signal, right? Because the signal is text scanned signal. And when the text is done scanning, that's where we would check our results. So here's how this is going to work. We'll call it, I know you're supposed to like name your signals like on text scanned. I'm just going to call it run next test. Let's do that. And then we're going to call it immediately. And we're going to call it with, what is this expecting? It's a string, XML text. Here, I'll just grab the whole method, why not? So there's our function. Run next test is what I'm going to call it. We have our XML text, which I don't care about. And then we'll run next test immediately, and we'll pass it that. This will get pulled down into here to exit tree. So just manually trigger our first test. And then also we're going to do build test cases. Test case list. Ooh, and this is cool. So this is where I can pass in var test case filter. Like, yeah, probably like, what does this have to do with anything? Well, until if I want to score the result, I need to get the result. And this is how I get the result, is by listening to the signal. By listening to the signal, I can then do, where did we have it? Here we go. We can score it, because I've already had the scoring basically working. This is all beautiful. This all makes sense now. Like, this is why, this is the way. I was like wondering, like, how am I going to do this? I'm going to run these test cases and then score the result, because I'm doing it as a while loop, And so then each of these is going to run, but then separately, like the only way I get the result is through the signal. So then how do I match up the signal result with the test that got ran? Because that's kind of disconnected now because of the signaling. But no, this is the way. This is beautiful. Okay, so we may be able to call, basically we call this, right? So we get our page text and our reference text, which we have not in this file, another file, but that's fine. I'll get to it. And we compute our score, and then I can raise an error. And for that, I'll just do log error if score is too low. Right, so, and we would do this if XML text we do this, we score it. And we would do compute page 1 text, which I already know how to do. I have that in the other file. It's just a question of like, should I be calling, ideally would be calling a method over an OCR manager. Call OCR manager, question mark, for that. Or I could have like OCR manager do all this. Well, no, because again, this computing text similarity score, this is all debug logic that should be in the debugger. But I should like be able to call over to the OCR manager for the operations I need and get the results back. For now, though, this will just be a pass. We'll just give that a pass. Oop. Cancel, save. Cool. And then this I'm going to pass into here. So build test case filter means that we could only build test case scenarios that we care about. This is how I can then filter out and say, hey, I only want one type. Which, the way I had these things set up, the way I'm structuring it, is look, notice how both these have aligned frames, right? Well, this test, the issue with this test is aligning frames. With this test, there's 3 issues. There's aligning frames, cropping page 1, and cropping page 2. So if I just want to investigate bugs related to cropping page 1, for instance, I could pass that in, only those tests would run. And so then I can quickly then run the battery of all test scenarios where there was an issue with cropping. And I could do like just crop page. Well, crop page would get all scenarios where we have cropping issues. And so that way I can, in this case, I'll probably just do crop page. Now, ideally, this would be something that gets passed in as an argument from the command line. But we'll get to that. I'm not going to worry about that just yet. And this seems like extra, this is extra work doing all this, but this is going to make me move so much faster, especially when I'm doing lots of tiny little debuggings, and I don't want to have to keep taking the VR headset on and off again to test. This is how we test fast. And I know that this will save me so much time later on, especially if I'm busy doing other things and I only have like an hour in the evening to code on this. I don't want to waste that hour testing one scenario, right? I want to be able to like write code, test, and be able to test 10 scenarios in an hour. And then, that way working on the project isn't this big setup where I need all this extra time to load the context in my brain and put forth effort. Anyway, let's build our test cases, shall we? So this is going to be a thunk. And then we will do a filter. It's going to be a string. And it's going to return void. And we'll pass on it. Oh. Didn't do typing. There we go. Now, I'm going to cannibalize this. So here's what we're going to do. Let's get our while loop. Let's pull that down. Here, let me give myself some more reading room. So we're going to do a while loop. And we need our main dir. Yeah, here we go. And where's test case name? Right. So we bring all this in. And we get our first test case name. And then what we can do... Oh, didn't want that. That was weird. Here, let me just pass this for now. And then we get next. So we'll keep doing this until we don't have anything, basically. Tester, I need tester. Yeah, this method's going to get destroyed, but that's fine. I mean, it's largely going to be the same stuff over and over again, but that's okay. I want to do it little by little, so I make sure I structure this correctly. So while we have a name, main dir, if main dir current is dir, I think that's needed for a reason. Can I do... and test case name in that seems to work. Good. They have a not in scenario. Sweet. Cool. I kind of want to do another if here. Oh, I guess you could say, fine. Let's do the hacky version first. If filter, and we could always refactor later. So if we have a filter, ugh, that's gross. Let's ignore filtering for the moment. Let's just get it working. Okay, so yeah, we do the whole thing, and then what are we gonna do? Well, I really just need to store the test case name, right? Yeah, so current test cases. Let's go up here. Var current test cases is an array of type string, and it's going to be an empty list. So now I should have .append autocomplete. There we are. Test case name. That's all we're going to do. So we just build that list of test case names. That way, this method's super simple. In fact, because it's so simple, yeah, let's go implement that. If filter and filter in test case name. Wait, no. So if filter. So if we have a filter, if filter in test case name, then we append it. Else, if we don't have filter, this is where it's ugly. And I will refactor this. So what would be the refactor for that? I mean, I don't really love that. So if filter is blank, then wouldn't filter... Actually, we should be able to do and filter in test case name. That should just work. It's a bit long-winded. What if we just do test name? Yeah, it just shortens it up a little bit. So that's it. Now we've built our list of current test cases. And we filtered it down. Now, if this is a blank string, then this scenario should always be true. In fact, we could do equals, we could default it. And if I do that, we shouldn't get an error, right? Yeah, because when in doubt, we only filter when we have to filter. And since an empty string should always be in a string, I would assume, unless Godot does something weird with GDScript, then that scenario would always pass. Nice. All right, so that works. And then, so we build our test cases, and then we run next test with no result. Actually, again, we can do our default here. And now I don't have to pass this in. And we're just going to manually trigger our first test. So, if we have XML text, which we wouldn't, but we could go score it, right? So this is the final leg of the journey on the previous test. For the first test we're running, we won't have that. That's fine. We just move on. So, what do? We bring in our date time stuff. Cool. Folder name. This should be done once. All right, let's hold off on that for a second. I think that goes in build test case list. And I might rename that to just like initializing testing. Okay. Current folder. Current folder's up here. I shouldn't need current folder to be global anymore, because now we don't care about it in separate places. Yeah, let's put that there. Actually, why are you... It's weird that it didn't complain about that. Okay. Current folder is going to be this whole pathing. I assume Godot might have some sort of path building functionality like Python does, but they might not. I think there are some things that GDScript is just a lot simpler than Python, so maybe it doesn't have it. Yeah, folder name doesn't exist. That is where... Let's change this to current root folder. And let's not initialize it. That way we get a nice error, hopefully, if it's not set. So what we would do... wait, no, hold on. Oh, Fine. I'm breaking things. That's fine. It's fine if I break things. Can I do that? No, I can't do that. Oh. Right. I'm repurposing it here. Our root folder is going to be that. So then here we will do current root folder is going to be this stuff. So that's our date time. That's our root folder. Test case name. So we're going to have to do var test case name, which is a string, is going to be current test cases dot pop. So if we append, we put it to the end. So we'll pop front. Let's do pop front. So now it's going to be the timestamp folder plus that. Let's create it, because we didn't do that before, right? We didn't do that here with building. Yeah, we just built our list. That's all we're doing. Can I do docs? Yeah, I'll get to docs later. Test case name, tester. Right. Let me rename that to be a little smarter. Test case source. Let's do that. And tester, let's do test case stir. That way it's, you know, named properly. There. So now that's where it's going to get. So test case stir, test case name, popping from the list. That's where it's going to get the test from. And then that could be it. Maybe. That might be it. We might be done. So we load our debug images. No, we don't want to do current root folder. I think we just want to do current folder. What did I have with current root folder? Yeah, this is the thing. The current root folder is the thing I just built. Okay, good. Right, so then we have to do, sorry, but to do a check here. If test case. And I wonder if this is going to, like, what'll happen if I do a pop on something that's empty. And we can do an else. Current folder. On detector toggled. I'm not even using that, right? Yeah, this was for saving images, which all this should go away, because now all this is being done in C++. And then down here, on debug save image, comment it out. No, I don't need to do this anymore. I don't think. If I broke something, that's fine. I'll fix it later. Again, none of this is being done anymore. Probably worth breaking all that logic. Create log file. Again, does that happen anywhere? Oh, yeah. Shoot. So I got rid of current folder. You know what? It's probably fine. This might actually be a good thing, right? Because now when I get that back, yeah, where's that called from? Debug log received. Debug log. Is that ever called from here? Yeah, so when we get the OCR results, we call this to write it. Okay, this might not need to be done anymore, because I think this is only done... Well, maybe we do. If I'm live testing. So this would be something to do if I'm live testing the app. Alright, I may have to refactor that later. Or I may get duplicates, because... No, that should still trigger. Oh, interesting. That means that not only does that trigger, so I guess all this, yeah, and then we log the text. We just don't compute this score. Okay, so this is even more reason why maybe it's actually a good thing then that that's happening. Again, simulate production as closely as possible when testing. So what I would want to have happen see, this is on... What I might do is not do this. And instead, here, again, alert game state to a debug event for the Hawker results. I mean, well, I guess this can just be a debug log. That's fine. And it'll go to the right folder. And then here, instead of doing a debug log, I mean, I still could do a debug log, but I would probably like like call game state again for another thing, and then that would come down here and say, hey, look, we got that result. Run the next test, basically. For now, this is okay. I mean, I'm not even going to be doing any of this. I can at least log here and say, got XML result for last test, starting a new test. Let's just do that. That way we can at least confirm that the loop is operating as intended. I wonder, I guess like both of these would trigger at the same time. Like the OCR manager would get its one and then we would get ours. Which, depending on the race condition, actually would mean this would get written to the wrong folder. Because we'd start the next test and then that would change the folder location. Debug log, hold on. So that would write a file. Yeah, I mean, if this... Well, no, hold on. Yeah. No, it'll be fine, because this will still be the timestamped folder. It'll just be writing it to the root. So the problem I have right now, if it writing it to the root would remain. It would still get written to the root system. All the more reason to refactor that later. I don't care for the moment. I'm not really using those files for debugging purposes. I could just turn it off. In fact, maybe that's what I will do. I will solve my problem right now by turning this off. I already know that I was doing it. So let me just turn this off. But yeah, the next thing would be actually to let this run, let it do its job, and then when it's done, go alert game state to debug scenario. Game state can then be, again, game state can alert debug HUD, and then debug HUD can say, hey, look, if we're debugging, do something about this. Otherwise, the signal just gets dropped and ignored, and who cares? I think that's all appropriate to do. All right, so run test cases. Your services are no longer required. On ready. We initialize the debug panel. Create log. We set up our signal for writing log files. Which, honestly, maybe that should take into account where we're currently writing to. And then, if we're not in XR mode, we're actually running tests. So, run the next test. Here, let's kill that. Run next test. We'll skip this. It'll pop off our test case. Let me do gamestate.log. Running test. Test case name. Actually, we want that here. So we'll start our test, get the folder, create the folder for that test case name. So we should see these folders pop in as the tests are running. Go find its source, go load the images from it, and then call down to our GD extension to set the images and trigger a scan. Let's clear that out. And let's run it, see what happens. No code changed for C++, so we'll skip. And just immediately run our test scenario. We already have our folder. And it only ran the one test scenario, as expected. And there's our images. Fantastic. And in fact, this is the one where, yeah, actually, this is the one scenario where like it was really bad because there was lag, and this is one of the things that triggered me to go rewrite all this code in C++, was because there was lag in getting the frames. And so because it was lagging, instead of it getting 5 frames within a half of a second, you can see like I'm like putting the book down because I thought it was done. So we get a lot of drift there. There shouldn't be that much drift. All this should occur in less than a half second. So we should get images that are pretty close to each other. But the result was, there's our template frame. That's the one in the middle. Again, I was already moving my hand down to put the book down. But, you know, we do a pretty good job of finding those regions. There we go. Like, that's actually pretty good. I mean, some things are cut off, but that's not the fault of the scanning. And then when we crop, I mean, that's blurry AF. But again, the OpenCV processes should fix that up so we can actually OCR it properly. But you can see here, this one, and the file name even says ECC alignment failed. So this one got rejected because it's too far away. This one has low correlation, so it got thrown away as well. That's a different check that I'm doing. So that's good. That's all really good. This one's too dissimilar, so it got thrown away. And this one's too dissimilar, so it got thrown away. Which means when we average all of our frames, we only have one frame to average, so the averaged frame is the frame, right? Because we couldn't merge data. And then when we enhance it as a result, like, okay, we did enhance things a little bit, but because we only had one frame of data to go off of, it's still garbage. This won't OCR properly. And there's nothing we can do about that. Like, there's no way to, like, I mean, I guess in theory, I don't know. We could be smart enough to, like, take this text here and move it to here and know that, like, it belongs here and align it, like, fix the alignment, so then that way this would get enhanced. A little more enhancement down there. The top here would get enhanced, but this upper corner here would have no enhancement right now. Oh, but now we've got more data here, so maybe we could, yeah, but that's, I don't know. That would have to be super sophisticated alignment logic or using a neural network or something to figure out that, like, that this blurry bit of blob belongs over here with this blurry bit of blob. I don't know if we could do that. And not what I'm trying to do anyway. So, cool. That test ran. Let me just run it one more time. So if I disable if I disable that and I run it again, oh, what is this? Trying to assign value of type nil to process main 58. I think I know what the issue is. Probably that. No. Sorry, debug HUD 65. Wrong line. Yeah, okay. Any append, assign, back, erase, fill, find, get. has something. Okay. Does Godot have ternary operators? Let me see. Godot GD script ternary. Compare this to the GD script ternary operator. All right, so cool, they do have it. Just a shortcut, but it's a fun shortcut, you know? So we would do equals this if actually we could do else pop. There. Oops, string equals. Wrong place. There we go. Okay, so if test case, so we're going to set it to blank if it's empty. If it's not empty, then we pop. All right, so this wasn't happy about that because we got to the end of the line. So if we have test case name, then we can do it again. Whoop, that was ugly. Or we kill our tree. Tree.die. All right, so now that I fixed that, let's run one more time. Darn. It's frustrating. Where's my folder? It didn't even create. It skipped the whole loop. Which is good that, like, I don't create the DIRs until down here. Because then, if there's nothing to run tests on... Darn. Okay, so I have to do the ugly version, then. Is what I have to do. So I gotta do this. Again, I might be able to refactor it, but if filter... if filter in, and then we can do else. I can't do DW there, not Vim. That's annoying. So if filter, so if we don't have a filter, then just append it. If we do have a filter, enforce it. Okay. That's annoying. Whatever. Slightly more complicated logic, but I don't care. There we are. Now we're running our test scenarios. And if we go look at that folder, we should see the second one pop in a moment. Whoa. Something's not happy. Oh, because I'm not pausing it? Did I tell it not to pause? I do like how it, you know, it actually OCR'd, but... Okay, so that's the first test scenario. This might finish. I'll let it run in the background for a moment to see if it does. I know what the issue is, though. So the issue is... trigger scan. So trigger scan is a function where we say process requested, we store a value for that. And if we should be debug mode. Wait, is pause. No, it should be is pause, right? Is pause false? All right, maybe we can do this instead. So what we could do, so we run the next test. We wait 100 milliseconds each time. So we could do here, let's comment this out. So we could do pause scanning. Hold on. So we could do, just for safety, pause scanning here, just at the offset, and then when we run our test, we set our images, we tell it to resume scanning. So it's going to then start, and then we finish. But we're waiting then for text. And when text comes, like, it's going to trigger that signal, and then it'll start scanning again. I don't know, we might be clearing out things, so I don't know. We could probably just do it here. What is the... Didn't I have a dumb version of this? Yeah, literally had it here. It's ugly, but hey, we finished. So we tell the background job to start. We can sleep here for a half second and then tell it to pause. And that should work. Did this ever finish? No, it got locked basically. It got stuck. All right, so if I run that again, That's funny. Shouldn't that work? Let's go a second. Maybe there's a little delay. Maybe there's like some startup cost or something. Seconds? Like, we should at least start seeing something happen, you know? Weird. What if I just don't do this at all? Oh, but we're still waiting for the trigger. But that's the thing, like, why would it be... Okay, fine. I understand you. Be that way. We'll set that to a second. I probably don't even need this one up here. Where is that? Yeah, probably don't need that. So that'll trigger it. Now we've created the folder. First test running. Is it going to get stuck at the second test? Running test. So we got to here. Scanning resumed, and we told it to trigger again. All right, well, I'll give up for now. I gotta figure out how this machine works. But yeah, I mean, that's the... At least I can run one test, right? Even if I can't run them all. I think I'm gonna stop here. Get some lunch and things. Where are we at? Where do we end up? Oh, did I never restart? I never restarted the carousel. That's fine. Sorry about that. So, error on bad OCR. Didn't quite get there. Oh, but this is why I was running. This is why I was doing it. It's like, I got distracted on the thing I didn't want to get distracted on, which was getting it to run multiple test cases. Really, the whole reason I was doing this was to error on bad OCR, which was where we finished off. So, that would be here. But actually, now I'm thinking, like, it really should be... Like, let this do its thing on text scanned. Let it go do its transformation of the Hawker results and, you know, generate and send things back. And so that's where I got to close the loop. So instead of it doing this, I should have it trigger... You know, I could even do on, like... Well, I don't know. I guess that's... Well, you know what? It's page.text, right? Page1.text. That's all I care about. So... When we add page text, which we're adding that to the app, here I could add a debug step where, yeah, I could either trigger a signal or otherwise send a message down into here. Basically call, yeah, Yeah, I could do like an if. Yeah, if we're doing debugging, or just like blindly call it and let the debug HUD decide whether or not we're debugging or not. If we are, and this wouldn't even be XML text, it would be actual text. So then we'd have the actual text. We could then call the score and then log out the result and then go on to the next test. Okay, so that won't be too hard, I don't think, to get the erroring on bad OCR. At least get our at least score our metrics so we can see where it's at. I guess the one thing I will need is I'll have to load in. I'll probably write it to a file somewhere, and then load that in as part of the test, and store like what the test result should be. Yeah, anyway, I'll figure out how to do that. But this way I can then run like a whole battery of tests and see, like make quick tweaks to the C++ code, run the battery of tests, and if quality goes up or down, I'll immediately know how well things are going. And then that alignment regression, I think I fixed that, but let's go verify it. Well, actually, I fixed part of it, but there is also... Yeah, no, this is that. There's a code change I need to make here, right? And then dewarp deskew. And I'm going to try to do these off camera. I may or may not stream. Who knows? I might stream on Friday. But my goal is, just like my goal last week, my goal this week is to be done with C++ this week and get back to Godot Engine specific stuff. And I think I can get there. I think some of this is just test harness related stuff, making some tweaks to make alignment slightly better. And then if I implement dewarp deskew, we might be at the place where the quality is high enough that we can move on. I think the quality is low right now simply because of specifically skew, because it's just the image is too skewed, and Tesseract doesn't do well with that. All right, well, I will dive into that after lunch. Thank you for hanging out with me, and talk soon.